Hey, this is Robbie Baseball from the Dingers Fantasy Baseball Podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 238, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles Movie Review. Chris McBrien here, along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Now, this week we're wrapping up our pop culture fantasy draft by watching our second and final movie from our draft year 1987. Last week, I nominated Lethal Weapon from 87, and this time it was over to Derek to pick a movie from our draft year. So he went with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and we're going to get to our full movie review in a few minutes. But first, what pop culture can you educate me on this week, Derek?
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
So in the last show, when we reviewed Lethal Weapon, it had been a few weeks since we had done a show. Normally, we do a show every week. So in this segment, I only have 7 days to watch a handful of things and review them and talk about them. But because we had been off for a few weeks, I had a very long list last week. And it's
you did.
When I listened back to it, it sort of went on and on a little bit. And so I want to apologize to the listeners for that. But hopefully you got a few gems out of there and some good recos of things maybe you hadn't watched before. So I feel that moving forward, I need to be a little bit, I need to contain myself a little more.
A little more succinct.
I've decided I'm going to create a new rule for myself. It's called the 5 or 5 rule. Oh. And so I'm going to limit myself to either only talking about 5 movies, TV shows, documentaries, 5 things, or if I feel I need to talk about more than 5, I got to cap it after 5 minutes. So that could be a tough thing for me to do, but I'm going to try to do that. And this week I actually have 6 things. So I'm sort of, obviously it's the 5 or 5. So I'm sort of going to be limited to 5 minutes on that. So
if you choose to go with talking about 5 things, will you still try to keep under 5 minutes? Because if you could be like, for sure, I'm only going to talk about 5 things, but I'm going to take half an hour to do it.
Well, I'm going to try to keep it under 5 if I can.
Either way.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. That sounds pretty cool. So
we'll see. I mean, hey, no need to chop us off at the knees if we don't have to, but
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
For next week, then I'll have our producer Sloth put together a ticking stopwatch. And if you're getting close to the 5 minutes, I'll have him put it in. I don't want to put him on the spot right now behind the glass because he's looking at me. He's like, I don't want to do this. But for next week, we'll have a stopwatch, and then I'll have him activate the stopwatch if you're getting close to the 5 minute mark.
Okay. And if we find that it's just a little too rushed, we can throw it out the window. But I think knowing I have a limitation, that might force me to be a little tighter with my reviews. So all right. So we ready to go? So I've got a few this week. So I'm going to start with the Steven. I'm just kidding. I'm going to start with the Steven Spielberg double feature. So we had a chance to go and see Steven Spielberg's brand new movie, The Fabelmans, in the theater. It's getting a lot of Oscar buzz. Honestly, this was not my favorite Steven Spielberg movie. I thought it was really long, really boring. I thought it took forever to sort of get where it's going. And by the time it got there, I thought, like, who gives a crap? It really was just not what I was expecting. The performances were great. And I mean, Spielberg knows how to shoot a movie, but I was quite disappointed with it. So
is it kind of like autobiographical in a way?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of knew a little bit going in that it was sort of in that direction, but it really just, I just had a hard time relating to the material. I didn't love it. Performances were great, but overall, got to give it 2 thumbs down. Then later this week, I had a chance to watch for the very first time the movie Empire of the Sun from Steven Spielberg from 1987 with a very young Christian Bale. Again, had never seen it before. Had it on my PVR for a long time and thought, I'm going to give it a go. It took me, I'm not quite done. I have about 20 minutes to go. It's like 2.5 hours long. And it was, again, it's slow, but I'm enjoying it. It's got a lot of good actors, a lot of big names in it. Again, because I didn't know anything about it, I didn't know who was in it. So it's like, I knew Christian Bale was the main kid, but John Malkovich got a big part in it. And I was like, oh yeah, geez, I didn't know that. Joe Pantoliano, Joey Pants is in it. And it's just like, again, it's a story about people that are in a POW camp in China once Japan takes it over in World War II. So again, interesting, decent, not necessarily something everyone's going to enjoy. Really long, but it was on my sort of bucket list of movies that I felt I had to watch, especially as a Spielberg fan, and I enjoyed it. Chris, I watched a movie from 1988, a little movie that I had never heard of. I was listening to a podcast a while back and they brought it up and it sounded interesting. It's called The Chocolate War. Have you ever heard of The Chocolate War from 1988?
No.
So it stars I don't even know how to say it, Ilian Mitchell Smith, who's one of the guys from Weird Science.
He's Weird Science, man. Yeah.
Yeah. It also has
Wyatt.
Small parts. It's got Bud Cort and Adam Baldwin.
Bud Cort is from, he did a lot of different movies. But he was Harold and Maude, and then Adam Baldwin was in My Bodyguard.
Yeah, so I mean, and it's got a handful of other people. You're like, there's actor named Doug Hitchinson. He's in The Green Mile. He's the sadistic guard that doesn't wet the sponge. He's like 15 in this movie. So there's a lot of people you watch.
Oh yeah, that guy. He was in Lost too. I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a story. They sort of compare it to like Dead Poets Society, where it's like about kids at a private school in the, I want to say like 60s, and it focuses on the main kid, and it's like he's having challenges with the headmaster of the school, and he's also having challenges with like this almost like a secret society that like gives kids ridiculous tasks or else you're not going to be popular. It's like one of these anti-establishment kind of stories. It was the book. It was based on a book that came out in the 70s that was banned. So of course you ban a book, everyone wants to know what it's all about. So it has like an underground following, and it was quite good. I really enjoyed it. It's got a weird name, though, The Chocolate War. It's all about they're trying to sell chocolates to raise money as a part of the school year, and that's why it's called The Chocolate War. But yeah, no, it was decent. If you can find it, take a look, from 1988, The Chocolate War.
Okay.
Had a chance to watch a movie from 2012 called Pitch Perfect about a cappella singers at a college. You ever heard of this one?
Nope.
It's got Anna Kendrick and
yes, I have heard
Wilson,
of that one.
Brittany Snow. Again, it's got a pretty big cast.
Yeah, and they made a sequel in it. Yeah,
they made a bunch of sequels. Yeah. Not usually my kind of movie, but I saw it in the lineup. I'd heard good things.
She's a good singer, Anna Kendrick.
It was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was like a pretty good feel-good movie. The songs were good. The performances were good. I really liked it more than I expected to. So, again, it's one of those, hey, it was on, I watched it, and it was 2 hours that I felt that I was, I gave up 2 hours to watch it, and I didn't feel like I was gypped like I did with The Fabelmans. It was 2.5 hours. So, the last real movie I want to talk about,
you better hurry because you're getting close to your 5 minutes.
Yeah, no. The last real movie I want to talk about is called After the Dark. It's from Amazon Prime from 2013. It's just a little independent movie. Well, I don't even know if it's independent, but I'll just read. So, Chris, have you ever heard of it's like a psychological experiment where they say there's 8 people. Imagine you're on a sinking ship and the lifeboat only holds 6 people. Figure out who gets in the lifeboat and who doesn't. And so the movie basically takes that idea, and it's takes place in the last year of a school, and the graduating kids on the last day are given this assignment, and they say, there's 20 kids in this class. Imagine there's a nuclear bomb coming. You have a nuclear shelter, and only 10 of you can fit in the nuclear shelter. Who do you bring in the shelter? And the teacher gives them all a little piece of paper that have their occupation. So based on that information alone, they have to decide who's in the bunker and who's not in the bunker. And then the movie basically acts out like, what would it be like if that's really who they were going into these bunkers? And of course, as things progress, they realize they maybe haven't made all the right choices. So they get a do-over. They get to try it. They get a couple of do-overs, and they get to make different decisions about who lives and who dies in the bunker. It was really good. It doesn't have any real big famous names in it. It's got a weird title, After the Dark. It's kind of a stupid title, but it's from 2013. It's on Amazon Prime. So if you got Amazon, it won't cost you anything. Check it out. I mean, after 10 minutes, you're going to know if this is the kind of movie for you. I've recommended it to a bunch of my nerdy friends, and they have loved it. So strong recommendation from me. This little movie that just randomly popped up in my suggested features called After the Dark on Amazon. And then finally, I see I'm over my 5 minutes. Finally, I had a chance to watch a documentary.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
What documentary did you watch?
I was going to say, I don't think the music should count against my time. That was 10 seconds.
Well, either way, you're already like 2 minutes over.
Yeah,
so.
I'm already 2 minutes over. This is bad experience. I'm glad you don't have the
your
ticking
5 or 5 is not working out so good.
Maybe you have
so
to do
far.
like 5 over 8 or something.
Yeah. Double it, 10 or 10.
On you know me, I love a good documentary. You know me, I love a good sports documentary. And there's a new sports documentary series that's on HBO right now about Shaquille O'Neal, the basketball player. And it's just called Shaq. And they have released 2 1-hour episodes. I believe there's 4 in the series. They're releasing them 1 a week. So I had a chance to watch the first one because it drops. We record this on a Wednesday night. The new episode just dropped an hour ago. So I had a chance to watch the one from last week. Again, not a big basketball fan. I know who Shaq is because I'm not living under a rock or in a cave, despite, the caveman. But yeah, I found it fascinating. A good rise to glory kind of origin story about a famous athlete who is dominant in their profession is always interesting. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I'm kind of really curious to see where the rest of the series goes, because if it's 4 1-hour episodes, this episode sort of got to like halfway through Shaq's professional playing career. So I'm like, they covered a lot of ground in the first hour. I'm really curious to see sort of where they focus the rest of this series on. But no, it's quite good. Very entertaining and strong recommendation. Maybe you want to wait for all of the episodes to come out and then just binge them all at once or binge them over a weekend. But yeah, it was quite strong. Called Shaq. It's on HBO Max. The second episode dropped this week. And I believe there's 4 in the series. So check it out.
Nice. 3.5 minutes over. Not too bad. All right. So for anybody that's new to this podcast, I'm not exactly up on newer pop culture. I know. I know it's true. It's true. But Derek, it's your job to inform me of the newer things. So, tell me about what to watch, suggest these things. And then, of course, it's my job to totally ignore your advice and just watch Meatballs and Stripes over and over again. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. You know. But recently, Derek, you told me about this series on Disney Plus called Dope Sick. It's all about the opioid epidemic in the United States.
Yep.
And I will say this, I would never have even considered watching this if it wasn't for you hounding me to give it a try. Because it's got a weird name and stuff. And I'm like, what is this? And so I went ahead and watched it. Oh, it was fantastic. Oh, man, it was so good. Michael Keaton is in it, and he was outstanding in it. I mean, I always think of Michael Keaton as Billy Blazejowski from Night Shift with my idol, Henry Winkler. But other than that, in Batman, I haven't seen him in a lot, since then. Now, let's be honest, I haven't exactly watched a lot since then either, so there's that.
No kidding.
But this show, Dope Sick, was really, really good.
Yeah,
the way that was it Purdue Pharma, the way they market their drug, OxyContin, it's like just this lesson in greed and corporate evil. And the actor that plays the president of the company, he's just this incredible bad guy. Kind of an original bad guy, too. I cannot say enough good things about this show. Dope Sick.
Yeah, it was very strong. Yeah, when I found it, so Michael Keaton won, I believe, was an Emmy Award for his role in Dope Sick. And that was part of what prompted me. The week after the awards, I was like, oh, who won awards this week? Oh, this person. I already watched that show. And this person, I already watched that show. And then one of the only people that won an award for a show I was not familiar with was Michael Keaton. I'm like, oh, what's this? So I sought it out. I watched it. I thought it was great. I've been telling everybody about it. And you're like the 4th or 5th person that I've recommended this to that has finally sat down to watch it and came back and said, that was great. I'm glad you recommended it. It was strong. And I'm like, hey, all I'm doing is shining a spotlight on the work that these great performers and these great creators put together. I mean, I can't take credit for this show, but if you haven't watched Dope Sick, check it out. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it on Disney Plus?
It is on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
yes.
It's on Disney. Yeah, that was the barrier to entry for a couple of my friends who didn't have Disney Plus. But if you've got Disney, and believe me, if you've got kids, I know you've got Disney. Check it out. Dope Sick.
Well,
very good. Very strong.
Derek, thank you for educating all of us on this show because it's quite good. I mean, apparently you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah. Now, if only we can teach you to not crap on the lawn.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and also teach me not to do this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, what did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet? Supplies!
I'll let you keep crapping on the lawn if you stop telling those jokes.
Why didn't anyone tell me my was so big?
Joke after joke after joke after joke.
We ate foul.
I bet she gives great helmets.
Never watch that part again.
This is dumb. This is dumb.
How many we got of this ship anyhow?
Not nearly as bad as, say, something like Revenge of the Nerds.
Evil will always triumph over good because good is dumb.
I don't think it's something I would want to watch over and over again.
They don't make movies like this anymore. They just don't. That was from our Spaceballs one. It's just so
Yeah, I love that line. Evil will triumph over good because good is dumb.
Okay, so Derek, we wrapped up our final pop culture fantasy draft with the year 1987. And by the way, I won the decade of the 80s with a score of 6-4, in case you didn't hear.
It was close. Close.
So for my movie from 1987, like I mentioned at the top of the show, I went with Lethal Weapon, which if you missed it, we reviewed this on our last show. And then this time it was over to you, Derek. You decided to have us watch and review Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So maybe we can start off with why you wanted to go with this movie. Of all the movies from 1987, why this one?
Sure. Well, there was a couple of reasons. First off, we've reviewed a lot of movies from 1987 already. So some of the sort of the cream of the crop, we've already covered, as we have with many years from the 80s. So sometimes you got to dig a little deeper to find that diamond in the rough. Secondly, as I mentioned before, I'm a dinosaur too, just like you. I still have cable, but I have all the specialty channels, and I'm constantly recording movies off of these channels that I think, oh, that's something I want to watch. And I'm at least once a week, my wife says, you're not allowed to record anything else until you watch some of the stuff that's on there to make room. And she's right. And so that's why I watched Empire of the Sun. It was a 3-hour movie that was taking up room on the PVR. I had to get rid of it. So Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is one of those movies where I've never seen it before. I've heard great things about it. I've seen some of the clips on YouTube over the years. It's been on my PVR for 3 months at least. And I thought, you know what? When we were doing the 87 draft, you picked it as your personal pick. And the little light bulb in the back of my head went off and thought, you know what? This is a good excuse to watch this movie from 87 that I've never seen, that clearly you enjoyed enough to make it your personal pick. And it has the bonus of getting it off my PVR and making my wife happy. So everybody wins. You win, the wife wins. Hopefully I win, because hopefully it's a decent movie, and hopefully the listeners win, because hopefully it's a good review. What I didn't know was that it takes place over American Thanksgiving. And as coincidence would have it, between our last show and this show was American Thanksgiving. So, of course, it was on TV a couple of times. And, of course, a couple of other podcasts reviewed it in the last week because they were doing reviews of Thanksgiving-themed movies, which, again, I had no idea it took place over Thanksgiving. It was just a total coincidence. So I was hoping for a great surprise when I watched this movie. Well, not even a surprise, but I was hoping that it was going to be good. I know that it's got a strong director. I know that it's got a great cast. But like I said, never seen it. So sat down this week and finally had a chance to watch it. So that was why I recommended it.
And your initial thoughts on it?
I thought it was great. I thought it totally lived up to the hype. It had been getting very positive feedback all my life. I've heard people say how great a movie it is. I know that Steve Martin, I'm a big fan of Steve Martin's work, and I know he usually does a great job. I'm a big fan of John Candy, although I know sometimes, you watch him and you think, was he the right person to be cast in this role? Like John Candy to me never really got onto the A-list. He sort of was put into a certain lane and was sort of stuck there. But this, and then you had mentioned this in our last show when I brought this up, was this, in my mind, was clearly one of his most outstanding performances. I mean, he had 2 or 3 sort of signature roles, and this definitely is among them. It certainly shows that he's an actor with range. He's not just a funny, goofy, improvisational comedian who's there to, laugh at the fat guy, although there is some of that in this movie. And that's clearly a staple of many 80s kinds of films, laugh at people because they're different, which is not okay. But he actually acts in this movie and does a great job. And I messaged you as I was watching it, and I said, I'm a half an hour into this movie and I've already both laughed and cried at John Candy's performances. This thing is great, and I loved it. So let's dive into it. Tell me about your relationship with this movie.
All right, so I got to come clean on something here, because I always am pretty honest here on the show. So just like you mentioned, I went with this movie as my personal pick for our draft of 1987. Now, I want you to keep in mind, our pop culture fantasy drafts, I think like any fantasy draft, should be about winning. I mean, that's the goal, right? I mean, you want to win the draft. And in this case, take home the Funko Fonzie trophy. I always want to win that. So a lot of the time, I will make picks in the draft based on what I think will play with the judges, you know? And a lot of times too, I'll make picks to try and round out my overall draft. And 1987 was an interesting year to draft because it wasn't exactly chock full of great movies. You know, it was kind of a lame year for movies, to be honest. So I went with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, not because I loved the movie, but because I thought it would round out my list. And I thought it would play better with the judges than the pick that I really wanted to make. I wanted to go with Amazon Women on the Moon. I love that movie, but literally no one has ever even heard of it.
And it's not available on the streamers. Not like we can go watch it.
So I thought it would probably cost me the draft if I picked that movie. So all that being said, I need to come clean. I don't love Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And in fact, until this week, I don't even think that I've ever even seen the whole movie in one sitting ever. And what's more, and I know this is going to be an interesting podcast, and it's probably going to get me hate mail. I don't even like this movie. There's a lot of good 80s comedies out there, but this ain't one of them.
I think it's misclassified as a comedy. It's got funny bits, but I wouldn't classify this as a comedy. I would classify this as a drama with funny parts.
That's fair. Remember last week when I said that Lethal Weapon was more than a sum of its parts?
Yes.
This time, I would say that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was less than the sum of its parts. Because basically it has all the ingredients that you think would make an amazing movie. It's got Steve Martin, John Candy, you know, two of the biggest, you know, comedy actors of the 80s, and we love both those guys, right? We've mentioned that. It's got John Hughes directing, one of the most popular directors of the decade. It's got a great concept, you know, this road trip between these two different people kind of forced to survive together. And it's got a script that should really, really tug at your heartstrings. But I find that you put it all together, it just doesn't work. The whole time I was watching this, I felt the whole thing is just a bit off. The performances were a bit off. The direction was a bit off. The pacing, everything. This movie misses the mark for me.
Wow.
I know. This is going to be an interesting one.
That's not where I was expecting you to go with this. Holy cow.
That's why I love doing this show. It's always a surprise. So, I mean, I think John Hughes, like, he basically had his finger on the pulse of teenagers in the 80s. You know, at a time when a lot of movies that featured teenagers were just about sex, and more sex. John Hughes he was making movies about what it was like really like to be a teenager in the 80s. Like, his characters were real. His scripts were great. His direction was just about as sharp as you can get. But for me, when it came to making, you know, quote unquote movies for adults, he didn't really land all that much. Like, you know, his big movies were all about or for teenagers. You know, if you think of The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Ferris Bueller, Weird Science. But his movies that he made that were aimed at adult audiences, like the ones that he directed or just wrote and produced, whatever, like things like She's Having a Baby, Dutch, Only the Lonely, Career Opportunities.
I haven't seen any of those movies.
They all pretty much sucked. And for me, I put Planes, Trains, and Automobiles in this group of movies. It just misses the mark for me.
Wow.
I know. I don't know. That's my impression on it. I always like to take a look at the box office. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was not that big of a hit with audiences back in 1987. It finished 29th at the domestic U.S. box office for the year. It took in $35 million. It ended up grossing just over $49 million because it was released late in the year. It was in like November. So some of
I was going to say, it probably came out around Thanksgiving since it's about a trip over Thanksgiving weekend. That would make sense. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, it wasn't a huge hit. But we also always like to talk about the cast. Now, we've mentioned some of the big stars here, but I don't know. Like I said, I think you take Steve Martin, you take John Candy, you put them together, you should have some of the most amazing work ever. And I don't know, it just doesn't happen. I mean, I don't think Steve Martin was at his best here. I don't think John Candy was either. I know you disagree with me, and that's fine. But I understand what they were going for here, but it just misses. Like, John Candy was one of the most beloved actors of his generation. He was underrated, like you said.
Oh, big time.
But everybody loved him, you know? And I don't know, something's just missing for me here. Like, The only scene of the movie for me that has any weight at all is the very end, when he comes into the house and he like sees what a real family is like, and that look on his face, and they end the movie on that, right? But that whole ending was a mishmash of editing. So that was not the original ending of the film. So originally, the way it was written, the way it was shot, was that Steve Martin arrives at the train station and finds John Candy there. And John Candy gives a whole speech about how he got a ride there from some trucker. And he talks about how, he's always had to sort of glom on to people ever since his wife died. And so Steve Martin feels sorry for him and brings him home for a Thanksgiving dinner. And test audiences didn't like it. They didn't like his speech, John Candy's speech. They thought, they thought it was kind of funny. They laughed at it. It was supposed to be sad, right? And I think they also didn't like how Steve Martin brings John Candy home out of pity. So the Hughes went back and sort of re-edited the movie based on stuff that he had. And so they made it kind of seem like Steve Martin realizes, when he's in the train, based on what he said, his wife is dead. And then, his character has some sort of redemption arc. And it was all pieced together with unused footage. Like that shot when Martin is sitting on the train, that was all footage that was extra footage taken of him between takes. And so the empathy that he's supposed to find, and that, this decision he comes to that John Candy is actually a true friend, it just doesn't work. And I think it's maybe the editing too.
See, I don't know. Like one of the things I was thinking when I watched this movie was Steve Martin. It's a story about Steve Martin's character. He's the main character.
Yes.
And the more I watched this movie, the more I disliked him.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if that was the intent. Like on its face, you can think, yeah, he's a normal guy who's been pushed to an extreme, and he's having a normal reaction by getting angry and getting frustrated. But the more I watched it, the more I was relating to the John Candy character, where it's like, yeah, things can go to crap and things will go wrong. And sure, you can yell at them, but that's not going to solve the problem. It might make you feel good for 10 seconds, but now you got to deal with the fact that you're yelling in front of, whoever you're yelling in front of. Whereas I liked the John Candy's character's sort of the point of view of it was just like, be positive, look for the silver lining. And yeah, part of the comedy is that he just goes to the nth degree and he goes over the top so much. It's that whole kill him with kindness, like literally kill him almost in some cases. And I almost think that again, I don't remember because I was younger and I never saw this movie before, but I wonder in the 80s if it was like the perception and the expected reaction from your audience would have been different. That did the audience feel that they were Steve Martin and they had to put up with John Candy, or did the audience feel that they were John Candy and Steve Martin was just a jerk? And I kept thinking about that over and over as I'm watching this movie, and I was like, I don't know. It's like, do you think in this situation, do you think you'd be more like John Candy or Steve Martin? Like, would you be the guy getting angry and yelling and telling the rental car woman to, F off 500 times? Or would you be like John Candy, where it's like, oh, well, things went wrong. I'm going to, try and make the best of it.
I don't know. And maybe that's what Hughes was trying to go for, was to get audiences to try and figure out which of the two characters that they related to. But in the process, kind of understanding where they're both coming from, I guess. Mm-hmm. But like I say, we talk about the cast. So Steve Martin, for me, he's always been at his best when he's this sort of over the top, sort of super extroverted. He's like a comedic force of nature. I don't know. Yeah. I think this part could have been better played by a different actor. Now, John Hughes originally wanted Tom Hanks to play this part.
I think that would have been an interesting.
Tom Hanks wasn't available,
right? How would this have worked with Tom Hanks, especially because this would have been Tom Hanks when he was still more out of movies like Big, where he was just shooting Big at the time. That's why he couldn't do it. Yeah, it's like it's not Tom Hanks. I've won 2 Oscars, although you even in the 80s could realize like this guy's got talent. So yeah, I think this would have been a very interesting and a very different movie with Tom Hanks.
So he couldn't get Tom Hanks, so then he considered Rick Moranis for the part.
I don't know if I could see Rick Moranis being that. I want to say evil. Like Steve Martin's character does some pretty. He's a jerk. He's a jerk. I want to say despicable, but that's even a little too strong. Like he just kind takes of a jerk. He's a jerk. He digs his heels in. He makes certain things. he takes certain situations and just digs himself in and is like, no, this is the way this has to happen. Whereas you constantly see Dell's character has the insight to think ahead. Like when they get stuck in the airport the first time, and he goes, well, when everyone else came down to the phones and started calling their family, he goes, the first thing I did was book the hotel room. Because it's like, he's got that foresight. He's not just this lovable jerk. It's this guy who is over the top. It's like, he's actually knows what he's doing. Like, give him a chance, and you're going to realize, like, he'll make you a better person by standing next to you.
And talking about Steve Martin being a jerk, I loved Steve Martin in those movies that he did with Carl Reiner back in the 80s, like The Jerk and Dead Man Don't Wear Plaid and The Man with Two Brains. One of my favorite comedies from the 80s was The Lonely Guy. It's this little movie that he made. I've seen it. The scenes with Steve Martin and Charles Grodin, my God, it's just gold, But I think he was wrong for this movie. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone on this, but
I don't necessarily think he was wrong, but I do think based on what you said, like other actors that could have had the part at that time, some I think would have done a great job and could have made this a better movie. But I think a lot of actors could have taken this in the wrong direction and would have made it, much less than the sum of its parts.
Speaking of other actors, the John Candy character, John Hughes originally wanted John Travolta to play Del Shannon.
Wow.
The studio wouldn't go for it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Good call, studio.
In the time between Saturday Night Fever, really between Saturday Night Fever's sequel, Staying Alive, and then like Pulp Fiction, for the entire decade of the 80s and like half the 90s, John Travolta was he was considered to be box office poison by the movie studios. So he wasn't getting him. And so then John Hughes thought, maybe I'll go with John Goodman for the part.
That could have been an interesting, because this would have been before Goodman popped on Roseanne, right?
Yeah, it would have been. And the thing is, like I've mentioned before, here on the podcast, John Candy for me was always at his best when he had a bit of an edge to his parts, like Stripes, Uncle Buck, Splash. All those characters were really likable, but they had a dark side to them. Yeah. And that's what made John Candy so unique, But here, like you mentioned, he plays this character that has a lot of pain, right? Obviously, and the thing is, like, the best comedy comes from pain. I think that's why comedic actors play dramatic parts so well. Mm-hmm. I remember I once worked with a director, and he always said the key to comedy is that comedy is never funny to the person it's happening to.
Right.
If you understand that, you can play comedy. He used to always say that. And I think that's true here in this movie. It's not a lot of fun to be a character in this movie because both John Candy and Steve Martin experience a lot of things that they don't like, right? But again, it just doesn't work. I should totally love John Candy and sympathize with him in this movie and think Steve Martin's a total jerk for treating him. But I found that I just didn't really care all that much.
Wow. I found that sort of the turning point for me in this movie where I was really 100% on board is when they have that scene in the bedroom and like in the hotel room the first night after it's about a half an hour into the movie. And it's the scene from the trailer where they're spooning in bed and he's like, where's your hand? He's like, between two pillows. Well, those aren't pillows. Like that's
probably the most famous scene in the movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So it's part of that sequence. And Steve Martin, like at one point, just like completely rips into John Candy. Like he just like he fires at him with both barrels. Yes. He unloads everything he's been thinking and trying to keep inside, but obviously not doing a very good job, and just unloads on him. And then John Candy, up until this point, has sort of been the lovable punching bag. Like he hasn't stood up for himself really. He's just sort of, sort of laughed it off. And then John Candy stands up for himself. And he says, like, hey, I may have these faults, but I like me and my friends like me and my wife likes me. And this is who I am. And if you don't like me for who I am, like that's a you problem. And like that scene to me was one of the best scenes in the movie. Like John Candy was just so perfect in that role. Like that was some of the best work he did in this movie. I'm watching and I'm tearing up and I'm like, oh my God, like he's so right. And you got to think of when this movie came out in the 80s. Like there was not a lot of people that looked like John Candy, that were standing up for themselves in this kind of a way, right? Like in the 80s, so much of 80s movies is let's laugh at that person for being different. Oh, look, that guy's Chinese, laugh at him. Oh, look, that person's gay, laugh at him. Look, that guy's fat, laugh at him. It's like you look back now and you're ashamed that we laughed at those things at that time. But it's like, here's a movie where not that there's necessarily picking on him because he's the fat guy, but he's picking on him for a lot of reasons. And he just, I love that he stands up for himself and he fires back. And it's like, but you can tell even as he's standing up for himself, he feels bad. Like it's I thought that scene was so good. That's what sold the movie for me.
So that's the two leads, but there was a lot of other actors.
Oh yeah,
in this film. So Kevin Bacon was one. He's got the cameo as the guy in New York. Remember, he's trying to hail the cab.
Recognized right at the beginning. I was like, wow, Kevin Bacon's in this. Yeah,
and then he makes another appearance actually, because later, not that much later than that, when Steve Martin is in the motel room and he's on the phone with his wife. Mm-hmm. She's watching a movie on TV. The movie that she's watching is She's Having a Baby, which was interesting because that movie didn't come out until the next year in 88.
Oh, jeez.
But since it was also directed by John Hughes, I'm assuming he likely had it in the can at this point. So he just used some footage, in the movie. So Kevin Bacon was one. Ben Stein was another one. He was the airport announcement guy. Yep. And he was also in Ferris Bueller.
Bueller.
He used to be a script writer for Richard Nixon.
For Nixon government,
before he started in these bit parts in movies. And then he went on to do that game show, Win Ben Stein's Money. Did you ever watch that one?
I watch it all the time with Jimmy Fallon as the host.
No, Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel, pardon me. I knew
that's where he got his start.
Yeah.
Now Ben Stein doesn't do anything, although he has gone full MAGA. So I guess there's that. I want to mention Lyman Ward. He was Ferris Bueller's dad. And he has a really small cameo in the boardroom at the very beginning.
Yes.
With Steve Martin. And he's uncredited in this movie. I don't know, maybe it was like in a favor for John Hughes or something like that, but I recognized him right away. My wife was watching it. She's like,
oh, there's a guy Ferris Bueller. Yeah, for sure. So speaking of the boardroom, now in today's movies, when I go to see a movie, I've been taught by Marvel movies to sit through all the credits because sometimes at the end of the credits, there's a little something. And I don't know what compelled me with this movie to sit through all the credits. I'll be honest, I fast forwarded through the credits. But there was a post-credit scene in this movie, and then I'm like, yeah, there's a post-credit scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off as well. So, but I had no idea. Again, it's just a little that whole boardroom scene. It's at the very end of the movie after the credits. There's a little postscript.
What happens? I didn't stick around for the credits. I don't know.
See, there we go. So, at the very beginning, the boss is looking at the 2 or 3 different posters for, the lipstick magazine or whatever. He's looking at it, nail polish, and it's the models and stuff. And he's like got the different boards. And he's like, this one, that one.
He's trying to pick between them, right?
Yeah. So at the end, the boss is still sitting in the boardroom eating a Thanksgiving dinner by himself, and he's still humming and hawing between the boards as if to imply the whole time this movie's been going on, he still hasn't decided. It was
nice.
Nice. So I wonder how many people who are familiar with this movie had no idea that there's
that even happened.
Yeah, it was just a fluke. I mean, normally I would have just been like, stop, delete from PVR. Wife, space has been cleared from PVR.
Deleted.
Nope. I thought, no, I'm just going to fast forward through this. And I don't know what compelled me to do it, but I was glad I mean, not that it's a hilarious scene, but it was just a nice little wink at the end.
One guy I want to mention was Dylan Baker. So he was the redneck truck driver. Remember the guy that was spitting?
Yep.
And he shook Steve Martin's hand after he spit the tobacco juice in it. And he's talking with his wife. He's like, she's tough. Her second baby came out sideways. So anyway, I recognized him because I just recently saw him in this trailer on some sort of show on Netflix. I remember when I saw him on that trailer, I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, man, where have I seen that guy before? I know I've seen him. And so then I see him in this movie like a day later. So I looked up his IMDb. I don't know where I know him from because I don't know any of his credits, but I think he's like one of those guys, for me.
Yeah, he's definitely made a lot of appearances. He had a very memorable part in The Good Wife, the series with Juliana Margulies. He played like a murderer who got away with killing his wife and basically was flaunting the fact that he was able to get away with killing his wife because of the double jeopardy rule attached to it. He often plays like those sort of creepy, villainous type of characters. And I want to say he was in one of the iterations of Spider-Man. I think maybe in the one with Tobey Maguire, the very first one. Here, I've just got his IMDb up here. He was in actually Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2. they were setting him up to be the villain, and then he never ended up. That series got rebooted, and somebody else ended up picking up his character. But yeah, he's been in so many different things over the years. He's one of those actors you go, oh, I know that guy. What's his name? No idea, but I know that guy.
Yeah, he's been a working actor for years. Michael McKean. I love Michael McKean. I think he's fantastic. I think most people know him from Laverne and Shirley. Remember, he was Lenny and Squiggy, or they know him from Spinal Tap. David St. Hubbins.
Yep.
But for
more
me,
recently, Better Call Saul.
Oh, that's true.
Saul's brother.
That's true. I have always loved him in Young Doctors in Love. It's this small comedy that was done by Gary Marshall. And it came out back in 1982. It was basically supposed to be like Airplane in a hospital. You know, he was Simon August. I always loved that movie. A couple other ones I want to mention quickly. Layla Robbins, she played Steve Martin's wife. The reason I want to mention her, I didn't recognize her from anything. But I was watching the movie with my wife, and my wife's like, there's no way Steve Martin is married to her. She's too good looking for him.
Oh, I agree.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting take. Remember when they went to the second motel? Remember the clerk that was there? I don't know. I recognized him. I was like, where do I know that guy from? So I was like, oh, I can't put my finger on it. I think his name was Gennaro. He was in Jurassic Park. He was the guy that sat on the toilet and the T-Rex ate him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I recognized him. And then one thing I noticed was I noticed Carol Bruce's name was in the credits for this movie, but I don't remember seeing her in the movie. She was Mama Carlson on WKRP. You would think of anybody in the world, I would recognize her in this movie, but I didn't. But apparently she was in it. So I don't know. That one kind of threw me for a loop.
You got to mention both the performer and the scene. Edie McClurg, is that how you say it? The woman who was a car rental agency. I always remember her as both the secretary in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but I also remember her from the Hogan Family series. She was Mrs. Poole, the neighbor from next door.
Oh yeah.
So whenever I see her,
you know where I know her from? WKRP. She was Herb Tarlick's wife.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that. And I mean, she's been in tons of stuff, but she's got that funny voice, but she always has that like she can be the loving mom or grandma now, or she can have that mean streak, or she can stand up for herself, and it's like. Her part in this was great. Just that whole scene where Steve Martin comes in from the rental car and he has that whole tirade where he uses the F word like 20 or 30 times, and then just her retort at the end is just like, it's so perfect. It's like, it's such a small scene, but again, people who know this movie, they sort of remember 2 or 3 or 4 key scenes, and that's always one of the scenes people are like, oh, the scene in the car rental where he keeps dropping those F-bombs. It's like, yep, no, that scene was great, and she was great in it.
I mean, she improvised her lines that she said. Remember when she's talking into the phone about the Thanksgiving food?
Yeah.
She improvised those. And funny, that whole scene took the movie from a PG to an R rating.
Oh, of course.
I think it works, though. Like, they were right to leave it in.
Yeah.
The movie was apparently over 3 hours long after the first cut. And then they got it down to 2 hours, and then finally down to an hour and a half. So it was interesting.
It'd be interesting to sort of see what was left on the cutting room floor. I wonder if there's like a super deluxe DVD Blu-ray that has some of those deleted scenes. But, I mean, you got to think. The reason scenes often are deleted from the movie is because they don't work, or they weren't great, or somebody was off. And so the director made a decision for a reason. But I also think that there are times where a movie might be a strong movie at 2 hours, and the studio says, we need you to drop 45 or 20 minutes to 25 minutes out of it because we want to be able to show it in theaters one more time per night. And then it's like, well, what about that 10 minutes of gold that just got cut out? So sometimes it's interesting to go back and see those deleted scenes.
At the beginning of the movie, when Steve Martin is leaving the meeting in New York and he goes to the airport, that's when you first see John Candy. He's sitting in the airport lounge. He's waiting for the plane. He's reading a novel called The Canadian Mounted.
Nice.
Obviously a sex novel, judging by the title and the photo.
And judging by the cover.
Yeah, exactly. But right off the top, again, it reinforced to me how this movie misses the mark. They're trying to make John Candy this big, lovable, kind of lonely soul with this broken heart. So why do you have him reading a smut book out in public?
Yeah, that's
I don't
true.
know. It again, another thing.
Well, I think it's partly that is the joke of the fact that he's Canadian too, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
that's what they're going for, but it just doesn't work. It just goes back to what I was saying. So one thing I want to mention, so they get on the plane and there's an exterior shot of the plane flying at night.
It looked like it was the same scene from Airplane.
No question. I was watching this with my wife and like 100%. I'm like, hey, I said, that's from the Airplane. They stole this from the movie Airplane. I recognize it right away.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, she thinks I'm crazy. She's like, how can you spot something like that? Like, how the hell do you notice that? But I went and looked it up afterward. Yep, right. They did. Yep. They did. They stole it from Airplane. One thing we always talk about with these older 80 movies, the smoking. Yep. John Candy smokes basically everywhere, you know. And again, I would say if I wanted to make him more sympathetic, maybe take away the smoking. I mean, I know it was the 80s, but like the ways that he annoys Steve Martin should be more innocent. You know, at least that's what I think would work better. But by making him annoy Steve Martin with like cigarette smoke, it's just annoying, period.
I don't think I think there was only one scene where the cigarette smoke was sort of an issue, considering how much he was smoking. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, that, yes, that was just one more checkbox of, you know, why is he annoying? Well, he smokes in places like a car with the windows rolled up kind of thing. But considering how often he is smoking, it doesn't really seem to bother Steve Martin in most cases. It's usually something else that he's fixated on. Well,
like, and the thing is, like, so John Candy's character is supposed to be like honest and sincere. And then he goes and basically scams people with his shower rings. Remember that scene? Is like, this is Daryl Strawberry's ring and stuff like that. Like, he just like lies to sell these individual shower rings to people. He makes them think they're like valuable or something. Like, I don't know. It would be one thing if he just sold them as different things. You know, hey, this one's an earring. You know, this one's a ring toss game or something like that. That would be fine. But instead, he lies to people. And he's like, you know, saying all of this belonged to celebrities and stuff like that. And again, it just takes away from that innocence of his character. You know, that I don't know. God,
I don't see. I like that. To me, that reinforced the fact that he's such a good salesman, because every time they go to a new place, even though it's an unexpected place, he knows a guy. Oh, I've sold this guy this, and I know a guy who knows this guy. And to me, that really reinforced the idea of he's always on the road. He's clearly been at this job a long time, and he's clearly a good salesman. Like the salesman that I know in my life, like I have friends who work in sales in various industries, and they are always on. They're never down. It's always like you invite them to a party and they're schmoozing and selling everybody at the party. It's just, you know, they can't help themselves. It's just part of their personality, which often is what makes them such good salespeople. And so I didn't really have an issue with him misleading some of these folks, especially because it was only for a few dollars here and there. But to me, that just emphasized how good a salesperson he really is. If he can tell you this is, you know, the Daryl Strawberry earring, something or other sign, blah, 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 when it's clearly not, and you believe it, there's something about him that makes you want to take what he's saying at face value or trust him. He's, you know, to me, that's just reinforces the ability he has as a salesperson. The fact that he can convince people to see things his way. And that's what he's been trying to do to Steve Martin the whole movie. He's just been trying to say, like, well, don't freak out about this thing. Let's just look at the positive. And through the whole movie, Steve Martin is just so resistant. And like, to me, this is just a scene where you see how good he really is at this. And to me, this reinforced how much of a jerk Steve Martin's being. It's like, come on, man, like just follow his lead for 5 seconds. He clearly knows what he's doing.
There's the scene where Steve Martin falls down and he gets lifted off the ground by his testicles. Yeah. And then in the car, he's talking with this like helium voice.
Yeah.
I know it's supposed to be funny.
It's a cheap laugh. Yeah.
But, you know, again, it just doesn't work.
And that's an 80s joke. Like, to me,
I know, but it doesn't belong here. It was out of place. And another thing that stood out to me as out of place, when they're driving the wrong way down the highway and Steve Martin wakes up in this panic and John Candy appears briefly as the devil. Remember, he was wearing horns.
Oh, yeah.
In the red suit with the pitchfork and stuff. Again, it just doesn't work. It just, I don't know. The whole thing just misses the mark for me. My wife spent the majority of this movie on her phone and I was so jealous. Oh, man. So I guess my overall takeaway from the movie was that they have lots of adventures. They get into all kinds of situations. but it just feels kind of empty and dumb.
Well,
I would get hate mail, I know. And the thing is, I went online, I looked, and the ratings for this movie, like, you know, Rotten Tomatoes and stuff, where people can go out and the social media sites, like, everybody loves it. So I know I'm an island of one, but I didn't like it. I thought it was dumb.
I think that because this is a season, now that I understand that this movie takes place at Thanksgiving, I'm guessing people watch it every year at Thanksgiving, and there's probably a certain nostalgia factor that people attach to it. Like for me, because I've only seen, because this was my first viewing, I'm not going to run out and watch it again next week. But I will probably watch it again a year from now if it comes back on TV around Thanksgiving next year and say, oh, yeah, maybe not the whole movie, but certain parts. If I know that certain scenes coming up, I'll be like, well, let me just watch this for 10 minutes and then I'm going to go out and do whatever I'm going to do kind of thing. So like I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I thought John Candy was the star of this movie in the sense that I really thought his performance was great. I thought this is definitely one of his better movies, his better performances, even if you didn't really love the movie so much. And I mean, Steve Martin's good in so many things, but I found that Steve Martin's character was, in my mind, ended up being more the villain than I think was intended. But no, I liked it. Like I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably giving this a solid 7.
7? I'll give it a 2. Sorry.
Wow.
I'm just being honest.
Right. It is an 80s movie, you know. You're supposed to give it some bonus points because it was from the 80s.
I'm supposed to like it. And I should like it more. For all the reasons I mentioned. I like John Candy. I like John Hughes. You know, I like Steve Martin. I just didn't like this movie. I thought it was dumb. But anyway, let's have some
fun with Caveman.
Okay, you know what? It's time now to play a little game that I like to call Pick the Flick. Yeah, pick the flick. You get the synopsis, then pick the flick. You get the year, pick the flick. Okay, here's how it works. I give you the year and the synopsis, just like the song says, and you pick the flick. Okay, and the common thread is just like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. All the movie titles are going to have some sort of transportation in the title.
Okay.
All right. It's going to be super easy. Okay. You're going to nail this one. All right. 1987. A bitter ex-husband wants his former spouse dead. A put upon mama's boy wants his mother dead. Who will pull it off?
Yeah, that was Throw Mama from the Train.
See, you're off to a good start here. Okay. 2000. Two potheads wake up after a night of partying and cannot remember where they parked their vehicle.
Oh, that was one with Ashton Kutcher, right? That was, dude, where's my car?
You're nailing it. 1983, the misadventures of a group of unfortunate but streetwise cabbies working for a decrepit taxi cab company.
Yeah, that was DC Cab with Mr. T.
We just mentioned this movie like last week on the show. Irene Cara just died. Did you hear that?
Yes, I did. R.I.P. Irene Cara. I guess she's not going to live forever.
Oh, my.
Too soon? Too soon?
Oh, my. He's right. Oh, jeez. She was in DC Cab. That's the only reason why I mentioned it. That's just awful. God, you're terrible. Okay, 2006. An FBI agent takes on a plane full of deadly venomous snakes, deliberately released to kill a witness being flown from Honolulu to Los Angeles to testify against a mob boss.
Was that Snakes on a Plane?
Sure was. Absolutely. Nice. All right, 1976, going way back. A mentally unstable veteran works as a nighttime cab driver in New York City, where the perceived decadence in sleaze fuels his urge for violent action.
Taxi Driver.
Yes. Okay, 2004. A little bit more in your wheelhouse, bud.
Okay.
The dramatization of a motorcycle road trip Che Guevara went on in his youth that showed him his life's calling.
Wow.
Remember, the title is going to have some sort of transportation in it.
I have no idea.
Oh, it's the Motorcycle Diaries. Okay. 1980. When the owner of a struggling used car lot is killed, it's up to the lot's hotshot salesman to save the property from falling into the hands of the owner's ruthless brother and used car rival.
Yeah, I just watched this one not so long ago. Used Cars.
It was a pretty good movie, wasn't it?
It was.
That was a good one, yeah. All right, 1995. A girl is among the few survivors of a dystopian Earth. Riding a war tank, she fights against the tyranny of mega corporation that dominates the remaining potable water supply of the planet.
Wow. Was that Tank Girl?
It was Tank Girl.
I had no idea what the movie was about. I'm just like, well, you said tank, so I'm like, that's the only movie I can think of.
All right, 1996. Renton, deeply immersed in the Edinburgh drug scene, tries to clean up and get out, despite the allure of the drugs and influence of friends.
It's Edinburgh, not Edinburgh. That was Trainspotting.
Sorry, I'm not much of a Scottish pronouncer.
No kidding.
Titles. I'm
You're the
Canadian.
guy who thought
I'm
that
Canadian.
Gerard
I say a
Butler
boot.
was Gerard Depardieu.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Canadian. What do you want? And the last one, 1970. All right, going way back. In 1825, an English aristocrat is captured by Native Americans. He lives with them and begins to understand their way of life. Eventually, he's accepted as part of the tribe and aspires to become their leader.
Wow. I have no idea.
A Man Called Horse.
Sure.
Never heard of it before? Richard Harris? No? It's a really
little
good
known
movie.
secret. I'm also a man called Horse for totally different reasons.
Oh my.
There it is again. All right, so that's great.
Because I eat a lot of oats. Come on, I don't know what you're thinking.
Exactly. Jeez. No, it's because when I asked you to count, you just stomped your foot a couple times.
Sure, we'll go
All
with that.
So next time we come back, Derek, we're going to be back with a top 5 list. We may have a special guest lined up to join us as well. So this should be really exciting next time out. So we won't tease too much more. We'll just say that and we'll leave it at that. All right.
Sounds good. We'll see you next time.
All right. That sounds good. So until next time, this is Chris McBrien on behalf of myself and Derek Myers. I want to say thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.